Chapter 5 of The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Adam Marsatich. June 2009, Alexandria, Virginia. The World Set Free by H.G. Wells. Chapter the 5th. The Last Days of Marcus Karenin. Section 1. The second operation upon Marcus Karenin was performed at the new station for surgical work at Paran, high in the Himalayas, above the Sutlej Gorge, where it comes down out of Tibet. It is a place of such wildness and beauty as no other scenery in the world affords. The granite terrace, which runs around the four sides of the low block of laboratories, looks out in every direction upon mountains. Far below, in the hidden depths of a shadowy blue cleft, the river pours down in its tumultuous passage to the swarming plains of India. No sound of its roaring haste comes up to these serenities. Beyond that blue gulf, in which whole forests of rock deodars seem no more than small patches of moss, rise vast precipices of many-colored rock, fretted above, lined by snowfalls, jagged into pinnacles. These are the northward wall of a towering wilderness of ice and snow, which clambers southward, higher and wilder and vaster to the culminating summits of our globe, to Dhaulagiri and Everest. Here are cliffs of which no other land can show the like, and deep chasms, in which Mont Blanc might be plunged and hidden. Here are ice fields as big as inland seas, on which the tumbled boulders lie so thickly that strange little flowers can bloom among them under the untempered sunshine. To the northward, and blocking out any vision of the uplands of Tibet, rises that citadel of porcelain, that Gothic pile, the Leopoldgil, walls, towers, and peaks, a clear 12,000 feet of veined and splintered rock above the river. And beyond it and eastward and westward rise peaks behind peaks, against the dark blue Himalayan sky. Far away below to the south the clouds of the Indian rains pile up abruptly and are stayed by an invisible hand. Hither it was that with a dreamlike swiftness Karenin flew high over the irrigations of Rajputana and the towers and cupolas of the ultimate Delhi, and the little group of buildings, albeit the southward wall dropped nearly 500 feet, seemed to him as he soared down to it like a toy lost among these mountain wildernesses. No road came up to this place, it was reached only by flight. His pilot descended to the great courtyard, and Karenin, assisted by his secretary, clambered down through the wing fabric and made his way to the officials who came out to receive him. In this place, beyond infections and noise and any distractions, surgery had made for itself a house of research and a healing fastness. The building itself would have seemed very wonderful to eyes accustomed to the flimsy architecture of an age when power was precious. It was made of granite, already a little roughened on the outside by frost, but polished within and of a tremendous solidity, and in a honeycomb of subtly lit apartments, were the spotless research benches, the operating tables, the instruments of brass, and fine glass and platinum and gold. Men and women came from all parts of the world for study or experimental research. They wore a common uniform of white and ate at long tables together, but the patients lived in an upper part of the buildings, and were cared for by nurses and skilled attendants. The first man to greet Karenin was Siana, the scientific director of the institution. Beside him was Rachel Borkin, the chief organizer. "You are tired?" she asked, and old Karenin shook his head. "Cramped," he said. "I have wanted to visit such a place as this." He spoke as if he had no other business with them. There was a little pause. "How many scientific people have you got here now?" he asked. "Just 392, said Rachel Borkin. "And the patients and attendants and so on?"
2030. I shall be a patient, said Karenin. I shall have to be a patient, but I should like to see things first. Presently I will be a patient. You will come to my rooms? Suggested Sienna. And then I must talk to this doctor of yours, said Karenin. But I would like to see a bit of this place and talk to some of your people before it comes to that. He winced and moved forward. I have left most of my work in order, he said. You have been working hard up to now? Yes, and now I have nothing more to do, and it seems strange, and it's a bother, this illness and having to come down to oneself. This doorway and the row of windows is well done. The gray granite is just the line of gold. And then those mountains beyond through that arch, it's all very well done. Section 2. Karenin lay on the bed with the soft white rug about him, and Fowler, who was to be his surgeon, sat on the edge of the bed and talked to him. An assistant was seated quietly in the shadow behind the bed. The examination had been made, and Karenin knew what was before him. He was tired, but serene. So I shall die, he said, unless you operate? Fowler assented. And then, said Karenin, smiling, probably I shall die. Not certainly. Even if I do not die, shall I be able to work? There is just a chance. So firstly I shall probably die, and if I do not, then perhaps I shall be a useless invalid. I think if you live, you may be able to go on, as you do now. Well then, I suppose I must take the risk of it. Yet couldn't you, Fowler, couldn't you drug me and patch me instead of all this vivisection? A few days of drugged and active life, and then the end? Fowler thought. We are not sure enough yet to do things like that, he said. But a day is coming when you will be certain. Fowler nodded. You make me feel as though I was the last of deformity. Deformity is uncertainty, inaccuracy. My body works doubtfully. It is not even sure that it will die or live. I suppose the time is not far off when such bodies as mine will no longer be born into the world. You see, said Fowler, after a little pause, it is necessary that spirits such as yours should be born into the world. I suppose, said Karenin, that my spirit has had its use, but if you think that it is because my body is as it is, I think you are mistaken. There is no peculiar virtue and defect. I have always chafed against all this. If I could have moved more freely and lived a larger life in health, I could have done more. But some day, perhaps, you will be able to put a body that is wrong altogether right again. Your science is only beginning. It's a subtler thing than physics and chemistry, and it takes longer to produce its miracles, and meanwhile a few more of us must die in patience. Fine work is being done, and much of it, said Fowler. I can say as much because I have nothing to do with it. I can understand a lesson, appreciate the discoveries of abler men, and use my hands. But those others, Pigot, Masterson, Lay, and the others, they are clearing the ground fast for the knowledge to come. Have you had time to follow their work? Karenin shook his head. But I can imagine the scope of it, he said. We have so many men working now, said Fowler. I suppose at present there must be at least 1,000 thinking hard, observing, experimenting, for one who did so in 1900. Not counting those who keep the records? Not counting those, of course. The present indexing of research is in itself a very big work, and it is only now that we are getting it properly done. But already we are feeling the benefit of that. Since it ceased to be a paid employment and became a devotion, we have had only those people who obeyed the call of an aptitude at work upon these things. Here, I must show you it today, because it will interest you. We have our copy of the Encyclopedic Index. Every week, sheets are taken out and replaced by fresh sheets, with new results, that are brought to us by the aeroplanes of the research department. It is an index of knowledge that grows continually, an index that becomes continually truer. There was never anything like it before." "When I came into the Education Committee," said Karenin, "that index of human knowledge seemed an impossible thing. Research had produced a chaotic mountain of results, in 100 languages, and 1,000 different types of publication." He smiled at his memories. "How we groaned at the job! Already the ordering of that chaos is nearly done. You shall see." "I have been so busy with my own work. Yes, I shall be glad to see." The patient regarded the surgeon for a time with interested eyes. "You work here always?" he asked abruptly. "No," said Fowler, "but mostly you work here?" "I have worked about 7 years out of the past 10. At times I go away, down there. One has to. At least I have to. There is a sort of grayness comes over all of this. One feels hungry for life, real, personal, passionate life, love-making, eating and drinking for the fun of the thing, jostling crowds, having adventures, laughter, above all laughter." "Yes," said Karenin understandingly. "And then one day, suddenly one thinks of these high mountains again." "That is how I would have lived, if it had not been for my defects," said Karenin. "Nobody knows but those who have borne it to the exasperation of abnormality. It will be good when you have nobody alive whose body cannot live the wholesome everyday life, whose spirit cannot come up into these high places as it wills." "We shall manage that soon," said Fowler. "For endless generations man has struggled upward against the indignities of his body, and the indignities of his soul, pains, incapacities, vile fears, black moods, despairs. How well I've known them! They've taken more time than all your holidays. It is true, is it not, that every man is something of a cripple and something of a beast? I've dipped a little deeper than most, that's all. It's only now when he has fully learnt the truth of that he can take hold of himself to be neither beast nor cripple. Now that he overcomes his servitude to his body, he can for the first time think of living the full life of his body. Before another generation dies, you'll have the thing in hand. You'll do as you please with the old Adam and the vestiges from the brutes and reptiles that lurk in his body and spirit. Isn't that so?" "You put it boldly," said Fowler. Karenin laughed cheerfully at his caution. "When," asked Karenin suddenly, "when will you operate?" "The day after tomorrow," said Fowler. "For a day I want you to drink and eat as I shall prescribe, and you may think and talk as you please." "I should like to see this place." "You shall go through it this afternoon. I will have 2 men carry you in a litter, and tomorrow you shall lie out upon the terrace. Our mountains here are the most beautiful in the world." Section 3. The next morning Karenin got up early, and watched the sun rise over the mountains, and breakfasted lightly, and then the young gardener, his secretary, came to consult him upon the spending of his day. Would he care to see people? Or was this gnawing pain within him too much to permit him to do that? "I'd like to talk," said Karenin. "There must be all sorts of lively-minded people here. Let them come and gossip with me. It will distract me, and I can't tell you how interesting it makes everything that is going on to have seen the dawn of one's own last day." "Your last day?" "Fowler will kill me. If he does not, he will not leave very much of me. So that this is my last day anyhow. The days afterward, if they come at all to me, will be refuse, I know." Gardner was about to speak when Karenin went on again. "I hope he kills me, Gardner. Don't be old-fashioned. The thing I am most afraid of is that last rag of life. I may just go on, a scarred salvage of suffering stuff, and then, all the things I have hidden and kept down or discounted or set right afterwards, will get the better of me. I shall be peevish. I may lose my grip upon my own egotism. It's never been a very firm grip. No, no, Gardner, don't say that. You know better. You've had glimpses of it. Suppose I came through on the other side of this affair, belittled, vain, and spiteful, using the prestige I have got among men by my good work in the past, just to serve some small invalid purpose." He was silent for a time, watching the mists among the distant precipices change to clouds of light, and drift and dissolve before the searching rays of the sunrise. "Yes," he said at last, "I'm afraid of these anesthetics and these fag ends of life. It's the life we are all afraid of. Death. Nobody minds just death. Fowler is clever, but some day surgery will know its duty better, and not be so anxious just to save something, provided only that it quivers. I've tried to hold my end up properly and do my work. After Fowler has done with me, I am certain I shall be unfit for work. And what else is there for me? I know I shall not be fit for work. I do not see why life should be judged by its last trailing thread of vitality. I know it for the splendid thing it is. I who have been a diseased creature from the beginning. I know it well enough not to confuse it with its husks. Remember that, Gardner. If presently my heart fails me and I despair, and if I go through a little phase of pain and ingratitude and dark forgetfulness before the end, don't believe what I may say at the last. If the fabric is good enough, the selvage doesn't matter. It can't matter. So long as you are alive, you are just the moment, perhaps, but when you are dead, then you are all your life from the first moment to the last. Section 4. Presently, in accordance with his wish, people came to talk to him, and he could forget himself again. Rachel Borkin sat for a long time with him and talked chiefly of women in the world, and with her was a girl named Edith Hayton, who was already very well known as a cytologist, and several of the younger men who were working in the place, and a patient named Kahn, a poet, and Edwards, a designer of plays and shows, spent some time with him. The talk wandered from point to point, and came back upon itself, and became now earnest and now trivial as the chance suggestions determined. But soon afterwards Gardner wrote down notes of things he remembered, and it is possible to put together again the outlook of Karenin upon the world, and how he thought and felt about many of the principal things in life. "Our age," he said, "has been so far an age of scene-shifting. We have been preparing a stage, clearing away the setting of a drama that was played out and growing tiresome. If I could but sit out the first few scenes of the new spectacle! How encumbered the world has become! It was ailing as I am ailing with the growth of unmeaning things. It was entangled, feverish, confused. It was in a sore need of release, and I suppose that nothing less than the violence of those bombs could have released it and made it a healthy world again. I suppose they were necessary. Just as everything turns to evil in a fevered body, so everything seemed turning to evil in those last years of the old time. Everywhere there were obsolete organizations seizing upon all the fine new things that science was giving to the world, nationalities, all sorts of political bodies, the churches and sects, proprietorship, seizing upon those treat powers and limitless possibilities, and turning them to evil uses. And they would not suffer open speech. They would not permit of education. They would not let one be educated to the needs of the new time. You who are younger cannot imagine the mixture of desperate hope and protesting despair in which we who could believe in the possibilities of science lived in those years, before atomic energy came. It was not only that the mass of people would not attend, would not understand, but that those who did not understand lacked the power of real belief. They said the things, they saw the things, and the things meant nothing to them. I have been reading some old papers lately. It is wonderful how our fathers bore themselves towards science. They hated it, they feared it, they permitted a few scientific men to exist and work, a pitiful handful. "Don't find out anything about us," they said to them. "Don't inflict vision upon us. Spare our little ways of life from the fearful shaft of understanding. But do tricks for us, little limited tricks. Give us cheap lighting, and cure us of certain disagreeable things. Cure us of cancer. Cure us of consumption. Cure our colds and relieve us after repletion." We have changed all that, Gardner. Science is no longer our servant. We know it for something greater than our little individual selves. It is the awakening mind of the race. And in a little while, I wish indeed I could watch for that little while, now that the curtain has risen. "While I lie here, they are clearing up what is left of the bombs in London," he said. "Then they are going to repair the ruins, and make it as all like as possible to its former condition, before the bombs fell. Perhaps they will dig out the old house in St. John's Wood, to which my father went after his expulsion from Russia. That London of my memories seems to me like a place in another world. For you younger people, it must seem like a place that could never have existed." "Is there much left standing?" asked Edith Hayden. "Square miles that are scarcely shaken in the south and northwest, they say, and most of the bridges and large areas of dock. Westminster, which held most of the government offices, suffered badly from the small bomb that destroyed the Parliament. There are very few traces of the old thoroughfare of Whitehall or the government region thereabout, but there are plentiful drawings to scale of its buildings, and the great hole in the east of London scarcely matters. That was a poor district and very like the north and the south. It will be possible to reconstruct most of it. It is wanted. Already it becomes difficult to recall the old time, even for us who saw it." "It seems very distant to me," said the girl. "It was an unwholesome world," reflected Karenin. "I seem to remember everybody about my childhood as if they were ill. They were ill. They were sick with confusion. Everybody was anxious about money, and everybody was doing uncongenial things. They ate a queer mixture of foods, either too much or too little, and at odd hours. One sees how ill they were by their advertisements. All of this new region of London they are opening up now is plastered with advertisements of pills. Everybody must have been taking pills. In one of the hotel rooms in the Strand, they have found the luggage of a lady covered up by falling rubble and unburnt, and she was equipped with 9 different sorts of pill and tabloid. The pill-carrying age followed the weapon-carrying age. They were equally strange to us. People's skins must have been in a vile state. Very few people were properly washed. They carried the filth of months on their clothes. All the clothes they wore were old clothes. Our way of pulping our clothes again after a week or so of wear would have seemed fantastic to them. Their clothing hardly bears thinking about, and the congestion of them! Everybody was jostling against everybody in those awful towns, and an uproar. People were run over and crushed by the hundred. Every year in London the cars and omnibuses alone killed or disabled 20,000 people. In Paris it was worse. People used to fall dead for want of air in the crowded ways. The irritation of London, internal and external, must have been maddening. It was a maddened world. It is like thinking of a sick child. One has the same effect of feverish urgencies and acute irrational disappointments. "All of history," he said, "is a record of childhood." and yet not exactly a childhood. There is something clean and keen about even a sick child, and something touching. But so much of the old times makes one angry. So much they did seems grossly stupid, obstinately, outrageously stupid, which is a very opposite to being fresh and young. I was reading only the other day about Bismarck, that hero of 19th century politics, that sequel to Napoleon, that god of blood and iron, and he was just a beery, obstinate, dull man. Indeed, that is what he was, the commonest, coarsest man who ever became great. I looked at his portraits, a heavy, almost froggish face, with projecting eyes and a thick mustache to hide a poor mouth. He aimed at nothing but Germany, Germany emphasized, indurated, enlarged, Germany and his class in Germany. Beyond that, he had no ideas. He was inaccessible to ideas. His mind never rose for a recorded instant above a bumpkin's elaborate cunning. And he was the most influential man in the world, in the whole world. No man ever left so deep a mark on it, because everywhere there were gross men to resonate to the heavy notes he emitted. He trampled on 10,000 lovely things, and a kind of malice in these louts made it pleasant to them to see him trample. No, he was no child. The dull, national aggressiveness he stood for, no childishness. Childhood is promise. He was survival. All Europe offered its children to him. It sacrificed education, art, happiness, and all its hopes of future welfare to follow the clatter of his saber. The monstrous worship of that old fool's blood and iron passed all round the earth, until the atomic bombs burnt our way to freedom again. One thinks of him now as one thinks of the megatherium, said one of the young men. From first to last, mankind made 3,000,000 big guns and 100,000 complicated great ships, for no other purpose but war. Were there no sane men in those days, asked the young man, to stand against that idolatry? In a state of despair, said Edith Hayden. He is so far off, and there are men alive still who were alive when Bismarck died, said the young man. Section 5. And yet it may be I am unjust to Bismarck, said Karenin, following his own thoughts. You see, men belong to their own age. We stand upon a common stock of thought, and we fancy we stand upon the ground. I met a pleasant man the other day, a Maori, whose great-grandfather was a cannibal. It chanced he had a daguerreotype of the old sinner, and the two were marvelously alike. One felt that a little juggling with time, and either might have been the other. People are cruel and stupid in a stupid age, who might be gentle and splendid in a gracious one. The world also has its moods. Think of the mental food of Bismarck's childhood, the humiliations of Napoleon's victories, the crowded, crowning victory of the Battle of the Nations. Everybody in those days, wise or foolish, believes that the division of the world under a multitude of governments was inevitable, and that it was going on for thousands of years more. It was inevitable until it was impossible. Anyone who had denied that inevitability publicly would have been counted, oh, a silly fellow. Old Bismarck was only just a little forcible on the lines of the accepted ideas. That is all. He thought that since there had to be national governments, he would make one that was strong at home and invincible abroad. Because he had fed with a kind of rough appetite upon what we can now see were very stupid ideas, that does not make him a stupid man. We've had advantages. We've had unity and collectivism blasted into our brains. Where should we be now but for the grace of science? I should have been an embittered, spiteful, downtrodden member of the Russian intelligentsia. a conspirator, a prisoner, or an assassin. You, my dear, would have been breaking dingy windows as a suffragette." "Never!" said Edith stoutly. For a time, the talk broke into humorous personalities, and the young people gibed at each other across the smiling old administrator. And then presently one of the young scientific men gave things a new turn. He spoke like one who was full to the brim. "You know, sir, I have a fancy. It is hard to prove such things, that civilization was very near disaster when the atomic bombs came banging into it. That if there had been no Holston, and no induced radioactivity, the world would have smashed, much as it did. Only instead of its being a smash that opened a way to better things, it might have been a smash without a recovery. It is part of my business to understand economics, and from that point of view the century before Holston was just 100 years crescendo of waste. Only the extreme individualism of that period, only its utter want of any collective understanding or purpose, can explain that waste. Mankind used up material, insanely. They had got through 3/4 of all the coal on the planet, they have used up most of the oil, they had swept away their forests, they were running short of tin and copper, their wheat areas were getting weary and populous, and many of the big towns had so lowered the water level of their available hills that they suffered a drought every summer. The whole system was rushing towards bankruptcy, and they were spending every year vaster and vaster amounts of power and energy upon military preparations, and continually expanding the debt of industry to capital. The system was already staggering when Holston began his researches. So far as the world in general went, there was no sense of danger and no sense for inquiry. They had no belief that science could save them, nor any idea that there was a need to be saved. They could not, they would not, see the gulf beneath their feet. It was pure good luck for mankind at large that any research at all was in progress. And as I say, sir, if that line of escape hadn't opened, before now there might have been a crash, revolution, panic, social disintegration, famine, and, it is conceivable, complete disorder. The rails might have rusted on the disused railways by now. The telephone poles have rotted and fallen. The big liners dropped into sheet iron in the ports. The burnt, deserted cities become the ruinous hiding places of gangs and robbers. We might have been brigands in a shattered and attenuated world. Ah, you may smile, but that had happened before in human history. The world is still studded with the ruins of broken down civilizations. Barbaric bands made their fastness upon the Acropolis, and the tomb of Hadrian became a fortress that warred across the ruins of Rome against the Colosseum. Had all that possibility of reaction ended so certainly in 1940? Is it also very far away even now? "It seems far enough away now," said Edith Hayden. "But 40 years ago?" "No," said Karenin, with his eyes upon the mountains. "I think you underrate the available intelligence in those early decades of the 20th century. Officially, I know, politically, that intelligence didn't tell, but it was there, and I question your hypothesis. I doubt if that discovery could have been delayed. There is a kind of inevitable logic now in the progress of research. For 100 years and more, thought and science have been going their own way regardless of the common events of life. You see, they have got loose. If there had been no Holston, there would have been some similar man. If atomic energy had not come in one year, it would have come in another. In decadent Rome, the march of science had scarcely begun. Nineveh, Babylon, Athens, Syracuse, Alexandria, these were the first rough experiments in association that made a security, a breathing space, in which inquiry was born. Man had to experiment before he found out the way to begin. But already, 200 years ago, he had fairly begun. The politics and dignities and wars of the 19th and 20th centuries were only the last phoenix blaze of the former civilization flaring up about the beginnings of the new, which we serve. Man lives in the dawn forever, said Karenin. Life is beginning in nothing else but beginning. It begins everlastingly. Each step seems vaster than the last, and does but gather us together for the next. This modern state of ours, which would have been a utopian marvel 100 years ago, is already the commonplace of life. But as I sit here and dream of the possibilities in the mind of man that now gather to a head beneath the shelter of its peace, these great mountains here seem but little things.